everyone, welcome back to Cottoverdi. My name's Annette and today we are going to be planting some tulip bulbs. Now it is the middle of January, it's not too late. What will happen if you decide to plant tulips at this point in time is they'll just flower a few weeks later, maybe, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks later than you would normally expect, which is fine by me and I don't mind. I didn't manage to get them in December, so they're going in now and better in the ground than out, I say. So what we've done, we spent yesterday, Richard and I, clearing this bed. So we did a spring clean, so to speak, on it. What I would normally do maybe in February or March, because I wanted to clear all the annuals and cut back the herbaceous perennials so that I could see exactly where I wanted to put the tulips. We don't have any tulips in this border yet. This is what I like to call the bottom border. Richard gets very confused with the names that I call each of the beds, and I'm sort of thinking that maybe I'll get like little wooden signposts made up so that he knows exactly which border I'm talking about. When I refer to the bottom bed, it's this one here. Bed or border, same thing. Anyway, so what I thought I'd do is I'd show you what I've cut back and what I've left in the ground. I didn't film the process of us clearing it because we just wanted to get on and do it. It took us all day yesterday to get this done and weeded, properly weeded. But it's clear now, as you can see, there's not much there. I don't really have any evergreens in this border yet. I've got one right down the far end. No, in fact, I've got two. I have 2 evergreens in this border, but there's not a significant amount of winter structure apart from these gorgeous obelisks from Howard Horticultural. And if you haven't seen us put those in, we did that last year and you can catch that in a previous video on my channel if you're interested. At the same time that we also put up a big arch. Anyway, what I thought I'd do is show you what we've got left in the border and what I've chosen not to cut back, which I think is quite important. And then I'll talk you through what we're planting in this border today. It's not just tulips actually, I've got some other bulbs to pop in there, and then I just show you how we're going to go about planting them, and hopefully we'll get some mulching done on top afterwards. So this is the back of our property here, and this border here is what I like to call the dahlia border. Richard is currently weeding the end of the dahlia border. This is the grass border over here at the back. Sorry, my finger's making it out of focus. And then this is the bottom border, and we will eventually have a stream running along here, which is why it's this sort of weird shape. But we need to sort of bank it up a bit, put some rocks in and dig it out. And then we will have a path along here, winding its way through the trees. This is the plum tree that I planted under in last week's video. I planted some bulbs there. So on this corner here, I cut back the achillea. This is yarrow, summer berries, and I cut back all the old flower heads. Here we've got a lovely wallflower that is just starting to flower actually. And what I've left here, these 2 things here, well, in fact, I think that's 3 plants. This is a scabious, which is an annual that I planted last year, but actually it looks like it's still alive, even though we've had some really hard frosts and freezer temperatures below 0. I've left them in because I'm hoping that they might come back. This apple tree here, which I've sort of given a slight prune. I don't really know what I'm doing yet, so I'm just learning how to prune apple trees, but I have given it a prune. And this one is a Cox's orange pippin. So this rose, I've cut back by 1/3 and I've created like a bowl shape. So I've created hopefully sort of an open shape. I've taken everything out of the inside and all the little spindly twigs, and then I've cut back by 1/3. So this is 2/3 of the growth, and I've only left the really strong, sturdy stems. Right in front of it, I've got some more yarrow, but this one is called Tarmica, and it's got these gorgeous little white flowers, and that sort of curves around the front here. So I've cut all of that back, and in fact, we can see loads of new growth coming through already. So all the new shoots are coming through. So in fact, this was a really good time to cut it back to the ground, because otherwise you run the risk of damaging the new shoots when you cut it back. I've also got a peony over here, and we can see the little buds coming through. So I took off all the old foliage from the peonies. This one is called Kansas. And then I have actually left in some snaps from last year. This is one called Apple Blossom, and it's still got some little shoots on it. So I can see new leaves forming. So I decided to leave it in because sometimes these snapdragons come back for me. If you can hear a noise in the background, it's Richard being very helpful and just edging the borders for me. I cut round them yesterday and he's just taken out all the old turf. Now under this obelisk, under both obelisks, I planted a rose called Simple Life, and then round the front is where I planted a load of anemones. So I haven't cleared any of the foliage from the anemones, but I have just nipped off the buds from the Simple Life roses because that was a new rose last year. So in fact, it didn't grow an extraordinary amount. I think it was just growing roots, so there wasn't a lot to cut back, so I've left that mostly. So this is our red bud, and it looked a little bit sickly last year, so I'm really hoping that it does better this year. Otherwise I'm going to have to replace it. It really hasn't grown very much. And around the base of it I had absolutely loads of gypsophila, and it's so pretty. I've also got a couple of wallflowers, but it's so pretty, and it just creates this lovely floaty mound of fluff at the bottom. But you can see that I've cut that back quite hard, right back to the ground. I should also mention, so I cut back the echinaceas, although I haven't cut that one back very much, but I also did not prune back my salvias. So there is a salvia just here. These are salvias that I planted last year. They're gorgeous blue colour. I'll put the name up on the screen because I can't remember. But I have not cut back the salvias because they are quite frost tender, and I find they do much better if I don't cut them back until later in the spring. Then as we move along here, we just did a load of weeding and took out all the annuals. And then there's another rose over here, this rose that I also pruned. So this rose here was absolutely gorgeous last year. This one's called Festive Jewel, and it has kind of leaned over, and I can't prop it back up without digging it out. So I'm not going to do that, but I have cleared out the centre again and cut it back. I probably cut this one back by a half actually, because I just wanted it to have really strong growth. And then as we move along here I have left this penstemon. So in fact I've left both these penstemons. So this is Penstemon Arabesque Apple Blossom, absolutely glorious. I don't want to cut back my penstemons until later on. And this is another penstemon. This is a penstemon that I grew from seeds, and in fact I can see that one's not doing so well down here, but this is Penstemon Twizzle Coral, and I absolutely loved it, and we can still see the seed heads on it, but I have left that as well without cutting that back either. And then of course the Brachyglottis, that is another lovely evergreen spot here in the border. I really love the silvery colour. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place the tulips where I want them planted, and Richard is going to dig a big hole and plant them for me, but we feel like it might rain or get dark soon. It's a really dark, bitterly cold day, so we want to get these in the ground before we lose the light. Okay, so what we're planting in this border are a gorgeous lily flowered tulip that I absolutely love called Ballerina, and this is a really tall one. It's going to grow to 75 centimetres, and I'm matching that or offsetting that with Merlot, which is a gorgeous wine coloured tulip that will grow to 70 centimetres, and both of these will flower between April and May. And then I've also put in here a lovely deep pink tulip called Van Eyck. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Names and pictures are up on the screen. This one only grows to 50 centimetres tall, but I think it'll be a lovely contrast. And I'm also putting in here a much shorter tulip called Princess Irene, and this one grows to 40 centimetres. And all of these are going to flower between April and May. Now they're probably more likely to flower in May for me because we're planting them a little bit late. So what I am going to do is mark them with some tags, but what we also do is we use these rusty stakes. So we use various different rusty stakes, and I use these to sort of mark the spot so I know where not to directly plant deep-rooted plants on top. I don't want to be digging this spot, so we just kind of stick a stake in, and I only mark a few of them with tags, but it's just so I can remember if I ever need to replace some tulips, which tulips I stuck in this spot. So what I tend to do is plant my tulips quite closely together, and I tend to put them in the middle of the border because as the foliage dies down, it's best to leave the foliage and not, take it away, and it starts to look really messy and dead. So I like to put them in the middle of the border because in the spring there's not much else blocking the view, but also that way as things start to come into flower and leaf out, they hide the dying foliage of the tulips. Now the reason we leave the dying foliage on is because that way the bulbs absorb as much goodness as possible to give them a good start for next year, and so the bulbs are healthier and more likely to flower next year if we leave the foliage attached. So as you can see, we plant them quite closely together, they're not touching, and I tend to mix all the varieties up. We've got all the tulips in this bottom border now, but there are two other bulbs that I'm planting today, and those are these tiny little bulbs here. They're really small and dinky, and they flower at different times. So the first one that I'm planting is called Sparaxis, and these come in a mix of colours. They're described on the website as patchwork colours, and I think that's because the centre of the bulb is like a really interesting pattern. The centre of the flower is a really interesting pattern, and then the petals around the outside come in a range of different colours. And I think it's just kind of dual colours. They're going to look really, really pretty, and I'm planting them down the far end of this bottom bed, so where I haven't planted any tulips, but they're going to flower between June and August, so later in the season, and I'm really excited about having these colours down that end of the border. And then the other ones that I'm planting are called Puschkinia. Now these are going to flower about the same time as the tulips, so between March and April. They may flower a bit later because I'm planting them later, but these are quite short. Oh, the Sparaxis grow to about 25 centimetres tall. These are quite short, they'll grow to about 10 centimetres tall, but they are lovely fragrant white bulbs. I'm planting the Alba variety of Puschkinia, and they are sort of starry shaped white flowers with a very faint blue line on them, and I think they're going to look really pretty and just add something special to this border. So I'm really excited. They'll probably flower a little bit later, as I said, than March, maybe middle of April, towards the end of April, but we'll see. I'm going to get them in today and let's see when they flower. So with the Puschkinia, I'm just going to dot them around at the base of this Cox's orange pippin. I think they'll look really pretty, and I'm not going to be messing with the roots very much because they're such small bulbs that you don't need to plant them too deeply. So they just need to be, 3 or 4 times their depth is probably sufficient. So as you can see, I'm chucking them in a hole, and Richard's just going to turn them all up the right way and plant them. I've chosen to plant these round the back of these geums. So this is a geum called Mai Tai, and they will probably have finished flowering by the time these start flowering, and I think it will be a gorgeous continuation of colour down in this spot. It'll be nice warm bright colours. We've planted all the bulbs now, and we're going to give it a mulch. When I say we, I mean Richard is going to give it a mulch. I always mulch over the top of the bulbs when I've planted them. I just think it adds a nice blanket. We mulch with well-rotted farmyard manure, so it's adding nutrition and structure to the soil. And over the winter, before these flower, the worms are just going to drag all those nutrients down into the ground, and it will really help. It also just adds another layer of protection from squirrels, maybe. We'll see whether that works. So I don't do anything else to protect my bulbs from squirrels and badgers. We have badgers and foxes in the garden, so let's see how many of these survive. And I would ordinarily, because we've now weeded this entire bed, I would ordinarily mulch the whole bed, but we're not going to do that because I've got more plants to go into this border. We don't have time to do that today, so I'll do that in another video. So subscribe if you want to see what I'm popping into this border at a later date. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video today and had fun with us whilst we planted these bulbs in the middle of January, and hopefully it's given you some confidence. If you've got some bulbs somewhere that still haven't gone in the ground, then do get them in the ground. Honestly, it's worth it, and they will still flower for you this year. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.